please note that the information presented in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and does not constitute medical advice. It is essential to consult with a qualified healthcare professional for any medical concerns, diagnosis, or treatment. This podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, and any actions taken based on the information presented are at your own risk. We are so glad you made the choice to watch our show this evening and join us for another episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast with your hosts, Steve Hodgson and Dr. Eric L. Davis. Let's watch what this evening's podcast is all about.
Your brain needs a break. The mental health benefits of vacation and travel. When was the last time you truly disconnected? From work, from stress, from everything that weighs you down? In tonight's brand new episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast, we're exploring how taking a vacation isn't just a luxury. It's a form of mental health care. We're talking real science-backed benefits, lower stress, better sleep, improved relationships, and even emotional healing. Did you know? 89% of travelers say they experience significant drops in stress levels just after 1 or 2 days of traveling. People who take vacations at least twice a year are less likely to experience burnout and depression compared to those who don't. Travel boosts happiness levels more than acquiring material goods. The anticipation of a trip alone can increase happiness by up to 15%. You know, a study published in Applied Research in Quality of Life found that planning and anticipating a trip boosts mood even more than the trip itself. Exposure to new environments and cultures promotes neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to grow and adapt. This leads to increased creativity and emotional flexibility. People who engage in leisure travel regularly are less likely to develop depression and chronic stress symptoms. Taking vacations can reduce the risk of heart disease by up to 30% and improve sleep quality, both of which are directly linked to better mental health. Regular vacations are linked to higher life satisfaction and stronger relationships due to shared experiences and quality time. Bet you did not know that your brain resets in as little as 48 hours away from your daily grind. Traveling boosts mood chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. Even planning a vacation can reduce stress and increase happiness. Here are some more interesting facts you may not be aware of. The number of digital nomads, individuals who work remotely while traveling, has been growing. In 2021, it was estimated that there were 10.9 million digital nomads from the US alone, a 49% increase from 2019. In 2019, global travel and tourism spending reached $9.2 trillion. The average traveler spends about $1,200 per trip, with millennials typically spending more than other age groups. 74% of travelers rely on their smartphones for travel-related information and bookings. Mobile bookings are expected to account for nearly 70% of all travel bookings by 2025. According to a 2021 survey, 83% of global travelers think sustainable travel is vital, and 61% say the pandemic has made them want to travel more sustainably in the future. Cultural tourism accounts for 40% of global tourism, with travelers seeking experiences related to local culture, history, and heritage. Solo travel has seen a significant increase, with a 131% rise in solo travel bookings over the past decade. Women make up 84% of solo travelers, indicating a significant shift in travel dynamics. The adventure tourism market is projected to grow by over 20% annually, driven by interests in activities like hiking, diving, and extreme sports. Ecotourism is growing at a rate of about 25% annually, as more travelers seek to minimize their environmental impact and engage with nature responsibly. Wellness tourism, which includes activities aimed at promoting health and well-being, is a $639 billion market, growing twice as fast as general tourism. Travelers are increasingly looking for destinations that offer wide open spaces and nature-based experiences. There is a growing preference for domestic travel, with many travelers exploring their own countries more than before the pandemic. Here are some key facts and statistical data on travel and exploration. International tourist arrivals worldwide reached 1.5 billion in 2019, but this number fell dramatically due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2022, international travel showed signs of recovery, with a projected increase of 60 to 70% compared to the previous year. The travel and tourism industry contributed $4.7 trillion to the global GDP in 2021. It supported over 334 million jobs worldwide, accounting for 10.6% of global employment. France, Spain, and the United States consistently rank among the top 3 most visited countries. In 2021, Italy, China, and Turkey were also popular destinations, attracting millions of tourists each year. Approximately 20 to 25% of travelers experience some form of travel-related illness, with gastrointestinal issues being the most common. Mental health benefits of travel include reduced stress, improved mood, and enhanced creativity. So tonight, host Steve Hodgson along with co-host Dr. Eric L. Davis, a licensed psychotherapist, will shine some light on this subject. Plus, a very special guest travel agent. We're giving you both the emotional insight and the practical tips to plan your next reset, no matter your budget. This episode is your permission slip to rest, to reset, and to put your well-being first, because your life really does matter.
Well, good evening, everyone. Eventually, I knew we'd be getting here live. For some reason, that intro just took forever. I mean, just forever. There's just no other way of putting it. That should have lasted about 3 or 4 minutes, and the technology that made that up really dragged that out. But anyway, thank you for being with us, and welcome back to Your Life Matters Show podcast. Remember, this is a place where we talk about healing, hope, and living fully. Because remember, your life really does matter. And I'm Steve Hodgson, and I'm here with the right Dr. Davis this time, my amazing co-host, Dr. Eric L. Davis, who is a licensed psychotherapist, and I believe one of the experts to me in mental wellness. And today we're going to dive into something we all need, but we don't always give ourselves, which is a break. That's right. We're talking about how taking a vacation or even a staycation can help your mental health in real and proven ways. We missed you last week, and it's a perfect segue for you, Dr. Davis, as you just returned from a trip on the road.
Yeah, my wife and I went to Michigan to visit some friends and had a great time. It's always just a few days away works wonders.
And that's really what we're going to talk about this evening. And we were actually very fortunate that your brother was more than willing to step up at the last minute and say, sure, I'll do the show with you on chiropractic. And I mean, did a fantastic show. Actually, I've gotten so many personal emails that were talking about how great that was, talking about holistic medicine. And really, a lot of what we're talking about here is holistic medicine. We're not sitting here pushing, Dr. Davis isn't sitting here pushing drugs on people, say, oh, yeah, we need to do this. But we're looking for the right way that we can do something about your life that matters. And really, as I said, that's what this show is all about. So the one thing I do want to say before we get into the show, because I don't want people sitting at the edge of their seat waiting for this travel agent to show up. Sort of at the last minute, the travel agent had a conflict and couldn't make this evening's show. And trust me, I attempted to find someone to step in for her. And unfortunately, on that short notice, it's very hard to find someone who wants to commit to doing the show and then answering a bunch of questions. So usually when I sit here and I ask Dr. Davis questions, Dr. Davis is going to ask me questions because I've done a whole bunch of research on, the subject of what we're going to talk about tonight. So let's start with why time off matters. See, we live in a culture that glorifies hustle and bustle, and we often take a break and we feel like, like we're overrun. Okay. It's hard to feel like you want to slack and just want to, just not do work. Heck, I came from the city that never sleeps, New York. Okay. Where at 3 a.m, there were still 3,000 people in the street, which meant that there were businesses that were working, businesses that had been open since like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning and were still going at 2 or 3 o'clock at night. So, science and experience, but tells us a very different story about our bodies. Studies show that vacations can actually reduce cortisol, the stress hormone, and improve mood, sleep, and even memory. Maybe that's why I really need to take a vacation. My memory a little bit, or at least my wife would tell me that. But when you take time away from the daily grind, you give your brain a chance to reset. It helps prevent burnouts, boosts emotional regulation, and even improves relationships. So, Dr. Davis, let's dive right in. Sorry about the pun, but let's dive right in. From a clinical perspective, what happens to our mental health when we don't take breaks or vacations for a really long period of time?
It's really kind of the same. It makes me think of like olfactory fatigue, when you get used to a smell. So like, if you walk into Taco Bell, for example, you can smell 15 different things, but a few minutes into it, you don't smell anything really. So it's kind of the same, where it's like being on a hamster wheel, and or Groundhog's Day, where it's kind of the same thing over and over and over. And what happens is we start to lose perspective, because you can't see the forest through the trees. So it's a vacation or taking time away gives us a chance to, mentally, and also physically step out of where we're at and take a look at things. And I honestly, on vacations is when I've, like, throughout my life, that's when I've had some of the best reflection happen, I think.
Yeah, it's people who knew me before I retired when I was still living in Indiana and before I actually came down with the restrictive lung disease will tell you they used to think we hit lotto because we used to travel all the time, my wife and I, whether it be the Bahamas. I mean, heck, we even went to Scotland, Ireland. I mean, I needed to step away from my job that I was doing close to 70 hours a week and just take a break, because you'll burn out. I mean, literally, I sympathize when I even read that about people starting to burn out. You just have to walk away at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's hard to do because routine is comfortable. So it's like we almost have to break what we're comfortable with to help it remain comfortable.
Well, too, if you own a business, and from even owning your business sometimes, you can't just walk away either.
No.
And
No,
you're stuck there, and then you're ending up on vacation like I was with my laptop with me the whole time. And I mean, I can actually remember doing an obituary we did funeral home before the system, they were able to enter their own. And I remember sitting on the ocean in the Bahamas, actually putting up an obituary for the funeral home while I had in front of me this, vast beach and ocean in front of me. But here I was, my brain was in work mode. And, sometimes you just can't step away from it. And you literally have to. You have to find someone to run the business or just basically say, I'm sorry, but I got to shut down for a couple of weeks, for my own sanity. And I think anyone, any client will understand that too.
Absolutely.
Because really what it's doing, it's causing that chronic stress. Okay, especially when you want to go away. People experience it from work, or even caregivers really experience that stress all the time as well. How does it affect the brain and even your emotional well-being?
You know that I haven't watched the whole series like of Severance, which is one of the shows or whatever, but um, it, I think back to when COVID first happened. So 2020, I was in a board meeting, and we were, I don't know, we were several weeks into it, maybe even a couple of months into it, but I remember one of the board members said something that I'll never forget. He said, "Yeah, I'm just having a hard time determining if I'm working from home or if I'm living at work." And, I always thought that that was pretty profound, just because um, what it does to our mental health is we can't compartmentalize, you know? So did I freeze there, Steve?
Yeah, but you're still talking. Your picture
Okay.
freezes, but we still hear you. Yeah, well, a lot of times, even for me, probably the last 15, 17 years, I worked from home. Okay, I didn't have an office, out somewhere, and it saved on overhead, which I can pass on to my clients. But I've always said, everybody will say, "Hey, that's great. You're working from home. You have a long commute and all that stuff." And it's like, yeah, some days do I even get dressed? I mean, really, I'm just walking from my bedroom into my office. But the flip side comes at 8 o'clock at night when you're sitting there watching TV in the living room, and all of a sudden you hear your work phone start to ring in the office. So you've really not disconnected from it, because even though I'm still watching that TV, my ear is sitting in the other room listening for the answering machine to answer, to find out what's going on in case it's an emergency or something with someone. And it
Yeah.
couldn't remember my cell phone number and stuff. So, yeah, I get it. Now, people who have gone on vacation that you've had as clients, have you noticed their mental health change at all? Any kind of positive changes after they've returned from a vacation?
Definitely if they had a good time. Every now and then, throughout the years, I've had I've had a few people that like went on vacation and came back, more miserable. But no, I think it definitely, um, it's important. It's important to everything that we do, to take time away from things or to change things up. It helps with work. It helps with personal life. It gives us room to think about things or to figure things out. So yeah, I mean, I think that typically people, they just feel a little bit refreshed, even if it's just a day or two. You know?
And that's the thing, you can take. I have a friend of mine actually here in Florida, Eric, who him and his wife just like on a Saturday, just like take off. They go down to Daytona and they just spend the day down at the beach. They relax, they go out to dinner down there, not a care in the world. And just those little mini vacations just help. I mean, nobody says you got to spend, like we'll talk about later in the show, you know, thousands of dollars. You can actually have a good vacation just for little day trips, in your area and stuff. So that helps. I know, as I said, before I got diagnosed with the restrictive lung disease, as I said, Jen and I traveled all over the world. Ireland, Scotland, like I said, the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, which I talked about so many times, and all over the US. Okay. And we traveled either for vacation or the paranormal with some friends. Two friends of ours, we traveled many places, Arizona and a few others. And I can tell you from someone plus who works 70 plus hours a week, I look forward to getting away. I mean, there was no question about it. For the moment we said, okay, we're going to Arizona, and we all four of us bought our tickets, and we started planning our itinerary. I forgot all about work at that point, like that big smile on my face. Yes, I'm going away. Okay. I'm getting away from all this. Sorry, dogs, but see you in a couple of weeks. So, Jen would walk along the beach. I remember this. Every time we went to the Bahamas, I'd sit right down on the beach when I wasn't putting obituaries up. I mean, I'd sit on the beach and just stare at the water while she would go and walk along. She loved collecting seashells and stuff. And, I would just shut my brain off. I mean, it was just something about looking out at the ocean and just watching the waves and just watching the water. And, I could look left and look right, as I've said many times there. And most of the times the beach was empty. And, you had the beach to yourself. There was no radios playing, nothing. You just chilled out and relaxed, which was really great. But let me ask, can travel actually be considered a form of therapy or healing? And if so, in what
Absolutely.
ways?
I mean, so it's like if you look at cognitive behavioral therapy, it's obviously what we think and and how we behave are interconnected. So it's kind of like so we use cognitive behavioral therapy to help people with addiction, multiple other things. That's because our brain attaches to the environment, so smells, things we see, whatever we hear, and getting out of that environment can actually reduce stress that's attached to things in the environment. So it's kind of like, I can give you a perfect example. When I was working across town, one of the things that, and this was like, kind of coming out of COVID, I would have to drive about 30 minutes each day. And it was just traumatic, really. Like the commute across town, in the morning was just kind of traumatic. And so that was one of the things I noticed the first vacation I took after going back to work in the office. It was like, wow, why are my mornings so relaxed? Because I'm not driving anywhere.
Yeah, well, as I said, working out of my house was nice.
Yeah.
You didn't have to drive anywhere. I used to say, when people say I can't get to work because of the snow, it's like, I can't use that excuse.
Yeah.
I could say the dogs were laying in the way and I couldn't get into the office, but, I actually had to show up. But obviously, when you travel, and you're in a new environment, let's say, for instance, okay, I know Dominican Republic was very eye-opening for us
Yeah.
when I went there. Can that help people who's dealing with like depression, anxiety, burnout? Okay, he must be frozen because his thing is completely frozen right now. Okay, and he's coming back in. So let's see if we get him
Okay.
back. There you are. Okay.
All right. Sorry, but I don't know what's going on. I don't know why it keeps happening. So especially with depression, if you think about like clinical depression, a lot of the symptoms of that are, the person has a hard time getting out of bed, moving around. They're exhausted. They feel like they're basically, wearing a suit made of anvils. It's just everything is heavy. And so like breaking up that routine can do wonders, because if I'm in the same spot, I'm not taking care of myself. It just exacerbates the depression, really. So a lot of times the environment can, help kind of jumpstart the mind. Like being in a new environment, it really does it. Like changing our visual perspective, a lot of times can help us change our mental perspective, because we see things from a different way or a different
Well,
place.
also when we're traveling, I know even myself, you're more present and mindful of everything that's going on around you, much more than when you're just sitting, back in your house or even traveling to your office. Does that mindfulness support mental health?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's another thing with mindfulness. If you think about like taking a vacation, absence makes the heart grow fonder, the old saying. And so it helps with mindfulness as far as, what we have in our life, where we're at, basically it shows us more about how to appreciate the things that we have. So it's like I've always said, I love going on vacation, but I also love coming home, because I miss my house and my, friends and family and all that. So it just kind of gives you a new appreciation.
You miss your pets too.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Always.
almost sometimes feel guilty when we used to go away. I had someone that used to come and stay at the house so that didn't have to put the dogs in shelter or anything like that.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's funny because I had two shelties. They were sisters. I still have one of them. One passed away. But the one that passed away when I come back, this one used to go nuts and want to play and everything. And the other one would be sort of like, I walk the other direction. It's like, sure, now you're back, right? Okay, you didn't take us for the 2 weeks while you were gone. Okay, but that happens. But that's actually good because you have a relationship with your pets and your friends. Does going away impact your relationship with the couple or family that you're away with? I mean, does it actually help improve relationships? Is probably the best way of putting it.
I think so, and I say that for two reasons. So, one, there's a lot of problem solving that happens, a lot of planning and things like that goes into a vacation. So, I remember the first vacation that my wife Erin and I went on. We went to Vietnam Vietnam and Thailand, for like 2 weeks. And I remember her. So we hadn't been dating that long, and she said, "Well, we're going to find out pretty quick if we're a match or not." It was like, so I mean, in that regard, it definitely can. But it's also important. Something that I think I've definitely realized as I've gotten older is just the importance of also just alone time. So that I'll never forget in school when we were talking about intimacy, like so not, I don't mean like sexual relationships, but like an intimate relationship, like, into me, you see. So just being transparent with someone. What intimacy looks like is it's two overlapping circles that just kind of intersect. And so there's me and, them, and then there's us. And what that proved, or what they were saying, I've always remembered this, is that taking care of ourselves and that alone time where we, kind of recharge our own battery is just as important to the relationship as the time we spend together. That's kind of, I definitely didn't see it that way, years ago, but I do now.
Yeah, Jen and I, I think we both took the same thing. Hey, we're here to have fun.
Yeah.
We're here on vacation. Pettiness really isn't the place when you're on vacation. I mean, really, it's not. A few days ago on Facebook, on my personal page, I asked if anyone would be willing to share a story about a vacation and how it's helped them with their work and their lives. Okay. And it's kind of interesting because I got this email probably within an hour, and it was from a really good friend of mine. And I'm going to read it to you now. As you see, I got papers here, so I'm going to read it off the papers. So if it looks like on camera that I'm reading something, yes, I am actually reading this. Say, Steve, saw your post and wanted to share with you a special celebration that I experienced about 7 years ago. My family was informed that my second baby sister had cancer, and it did not look like a positive outcome. Tears were shed, but Sis was strong and filled with belief that she would get through this temporary challenge. I also informed her not only would she overcome this cancer, but she and I will celebrate by taking a special vacation together. It was a special brother and sister trip upon her defeating her cancer. Well, with a summer of continuing chemotherapy and radiation treatments, always with a positive expression through her weakness of body, she was told after surgery that the cancer somehow was no longer in her body. A couple of months later, my sister and I got on a plane together and flew to good old Orlando, Florida down here, where I not only had made reservations at Disney World, but had arranged some special perks through the Disney organization to recognize my amazing sister in special ways. We spent 5 memory-filled fun days together, laughing, loving, embracing, and relaxing together. 7 years later now, my sister remains with expression of loving life, a positive sharing with others, the gift of life. Besides the many photos of our trip that we will share together this very day, we also still share the memories. That's my special vacation memory. Thank you, my friend. And it's signed by Rick Hayes, who he said it was okay to use his name. And if you remember, we also talked about Rick a few weeks ago. I couldn't remember his last name. Remember the gentleman? I couldn't remember his last name. And then it came about, well, that's Rick Hayes, who's a very famous psychic medium, too. So, Rick has been a really, really good friend of ours for a good amount of time. And I really thank Rick for sharing that story with us, because that's really special. He saw and gave her that hope of that they'd go on vacation together, and they did. And I guess a lot of that is that hope, I guess, inside of someone has to help towards healing, or at least making it easier what they're going through. Would I be correct in saying that?
What? Say that again. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. That came off the top of my head. Okay,
right.
When you have that hope that you're running when you're sick and you're not doing very well, that's got to help you mentally fight the disease and whatever you're dealing with a lot easier.
It definitely does. I mean, it comes back to the power of believing. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. If I truly, and this comes up in recovery all the time, but if I truly don't think things could ever be any better, like, I mean, think about that. Like, how do I move forward if I truly have no belief that? So, I mean, so finding that hope is imperative. I mean, really to everything, I believe.
Okay, so let's switch it a little bit. How do we know, that it's time to take a break? Besides the fact that you're dragging along on your hands and knees trying to go to your desk, are there warning signs, mentally or emotional, that we're overdue for that rest?
Absolutely. So one of the things that they talk about in school, learn to be a therapist, is they always talk about self-care. And the reason for that is because therapists we can experience what they call like collateral trauma, or like secondhand trauma, because we're hearing traumatic things, etc. Mm-hmm. Some of the warning signs, for burnout and things of that nature, one of the telltale signs is empathy fatigue, is what we call it. And that is where, if I'm just not, if I'm being short-tempered, if I'm being short with everybody, or being a killjoy all the time, those are definitely big indicators that a break is probably needed. Another thing for me is, I love being a therapist through and through and through and through. No question about it. I've never regretted becoming a therapist. I've never regretted being a therapist. But, there have been times in my career where I was, working the 70-hour weeks like you were talking about, and, just did not make time for me. And that empathy fatigue would definitely start to kind of creep in, where I would start to realize, like I'm not liking what I'm passionate about as much. I wasn't looking as forward to doing what I do. And that was a big indicator.
And really, that's, even to someone who's feeling guilty about stepping away,
yeah,
like you say, you have your patients and stuff, and, you almost feel guilty about walking away from them, or someone who runs a business, like I was doing for all those years. You sort of had a little bit of that guilt about stepping away, but we need to step away for ourselves.
Yeah.
I know myself, when I came back from vacation, I was 10 times more productive than before I went on vacation. Even I was a web designer. So even designs, after a while, I felt like it was the cookie cutter. I felt like I was doing the same thing over and over again. But yet when I walked away and took a break, for a week or two and came back, well, I had all these ideas floating around in my head that were probably there before, but I was so stressed out, I just wasn't accessing them at all. So, well, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking before we went on the air about the show that we did with Jim and with his son about addiction. And thank you to the almost 1,800 people that have watched that episode. You amazed us. Okay, and, that was week 4. Okay, and that was good. But does traveling help people that are recovering from addiction or trauma? Will it help support that healing process?
So it depends on where they're at in their journey. And the reason I say that is because, like, let's take addiction, for example. If I don't, so let's say I'm I'm early in recovery and I have a trip planned. If I don't plan ahead, as far as looking out for what are the pitfalls, what are the potential triggers, those sorts of things, then really a vacation could be something that could ultimately be harmful, if it's a situation like that. But, I think that overall vacations help recovery as long as, we're being safe on vacation, making sure we're protected, all that. But vacations also, especially for someone in recovery, it's like, if I don't take chances in life to apply the things that I'm working on, as far as having better relationships or communication skills, etc., then I can't use the things that I'm working on. What would be the point?
Well, I guess, too, I mean, someone who's in gambling recovery, okay, and stuff, I guess Vegas really wouldn't be a great place to go on vacation.
Yep. Yeah.
And I mean, I was trying to think of some place, or even Mexico probably, or Jamaica. Let's go with Jamaica. I've never been there, but from what I heard, they walk around selling drugs right on the beach, there, and cops don't care at all as long as you don't take it out of the country. So someone who's recovering from drugs and stuff, that's probably not a good place to go on vacation.
So when we were in Italy with some friends of ours, we had reservations, and I mean, I don't drink. I don't drink wine. I don't drink anything except soda and water. So anyway, there was a wine tasting, or you could go to this winery, and I was just like, I just remember I was tired. I wasn't in the best place mentally. It was right in the midst of my capstone in the doctoral program. And it was one of those things where, of like, I could go to a winery and like appreciate, oh, look, this is how I can't taste anything. And, I have no interest in that. But that was a situation where I was like, you know what, I'm going to stay back. I'm going to skip out on that today. And it was because I was going to be safer we were already in a new environment, but it was like, I think I'll be safer just hanging at the hotel.
Yeah. I mean, why dangle a cigarette in front of someone who stopped smoking a week ago? I mean, it's just, in general, don't put yourself in that type of situation if you don't need to. I mean, it's really what it comes down to. So we talked a lot the first half of the show, or the first 40 minutes of the show. Well, actually, the first 10 minutes was watching that video. But the first half of the show, really, we've been talking about the mental health side of this. Now, many of our listeners here can be thinking, guys, all of that's well and good. But, you're telling us to go on a vacation. Vacations are way too expensive. Okay? But really, they're not. And some may truly be worth the cost for not only your mental health, but for family bonding, making memories that will last a lifetime, like Rick's letter showed. Now, we did some research and decided to bring some insight to some of your possible questions. Now, here's where we're going to have a little bit of fun, because as I said, usually it's me asking Dr. Davis the questions. So I'm going to play travel agent here, but really all I really am is travel agent researcher. I've done a ton of research on this over the last couple of days, and I think I can give us some really good insight on some of it. So now he's going to be co-host here. So now he's going to go to the question time.
All right. All right, Steve. Let's see. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. What trends are you seeing right now when it comes to people booking trips for wellness or mental health reasons?
Well, from everything that I did see from looking online, the trend points towards a shift in travel priorities. Travel is basically a seeking vacations that prioritize their physical and mental well-being. Now, you've seen many people I know. I've had many friends that going on these trips where they can go hiking, and go skiing is the other big thing that people go. So, and then I have the flip side because I also have a wife who's a psychic medium, and the metaphysics and being part of paranormal world and stuff. I understand some of the other stuff that's there. So let me give you a couple of examples. A growing number of travelers are seeking vacations focused on mental health and well-being, as I said. They're increasingly prioritizing disconnecting from technology and engaging in self-discovery. And we'll go into that a little more, but that's so important to just put the phone and put the laptop and the computers down. Even people are using their phone for everything. Just stop, disconnect from technology for a little bit, and you're going to find you're going to have a much, much better vacation. Now, it improves sleep quality. It's becoming something significant for wellness travel. I know myself, before I started using the PAP machine, and I think we were talking a little right before we went on the air about not sleeping well, some nights and stuff. And a lot of people are going on these trips because it helps them relax, and it's helping them deal with this. They choose destinations close to nature to include mental clarity and well-being. That's a really popular trend now. I know even myself, when we went to the Bahamas, it was either the beach or there was this other thing that was called Garden of the Groves. And it was this big nature preserve that was set up. And, it had pathways through. You'd see all the birds. They had little waterfalls. They had animals and stuff that was there. It was, every time we went there, we actually had gone there so many times that the people in the booth got to know us and were giving us resident rates instead of tourist rates to go in because we had been there so many times. But you know what? That was great for us. It was reconnecting with nature. And a lot of people are doing that as well now. They're also seeking customized wellness offerings for their individual needs. So, there are many people that want to meditate. And in a couple of weeks, we'll probably do a show on meditation and even yoga. And I'm going to bring a very biased person, my wife, on that because she is, a certified yoga instructor, and she has degrees in meditation as well. So that's going to help. Activities like yoga, hiking, and even cycling is gaining traction. Heck, that was one of the things I've noticed. Every place you go, you notice people on bicycles. Everybody's riding a bike and stuff. Even your culinary experiences. People are going to places. Actually, last Sunday, we were supposed to go to Wolfgang Puck's restaurant here, just outside of Ocala in the Villages. And we had a couple of things to come up, and we didn't go, but we're going to go to that. Just something different. Give your taste buds a chance. Yeah, even when you go over to places like Mexico, the Bahamas, try some of the local food. I mean, that's actually a good vacation in itself, just trying different things. Now, wellness retreats, even like art therapy, workshops to enhance mental and emotional well-being. Even resorts that are green resorts. I've seen a lot of these that are like right on the ocean, and your hut is sitting. And I guess unless there's a tsunami, it's probably a really good place to be, because you're not going to have anyone that close to you. you have the water all around you. It's got to be an interesting experience. So people are really doing stuff now. The trend is not as much going sightseeing as much as it is for your mental and physical well-being.
Yeah. So why do you think that vacationing as a, as like self-care is, I mean, it's obviously not new, but do you think we're just as people, we're just more aware of our reasons for vacationing versus other things?
I'm not even going to go with part of the answer that I researched here. I think a lot of it has to do with after COVID, things changed. Okay, people didn't want to travel for a long period of time. I have friends, and actually a client that was in Arizona, was a Jeep tour in the desert, and they'll tell you how business grinded to a complete halt for a number of months afterwards. Plus, number two, I'll give you another personal example. Jen and I were supposed to go to this resort in Mexico. The company that we were going to the Bahamas with had resorts in Dominican Republic and in Mexico. And we went to the one in Dominican Republic, and I said to her, come on, it's to the Bahamas this year, so let's go to Mexico. It's like, we've never been, we could always say we went. And Jimmy, who was on the show with the addiction thing, will tell you he swears by Mexico. He goes there at least 5 weeks a year. And we had booked a vacation, but when you have that little thing inside your head, something just isn't right. Okay, that little gut feeling that maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Okay, and 1 week after we booked, now with the vacation was booked for like 3 months in advance. 1 week after we booked the vacation, I see this article about how the cartels in that area blew up a passenger ferry.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what the heck? Okay. And she's like, no, that's just like an isolated thing. And it's like, no, okay, but now the spidey senses were really going nuts. 2 weeks following that, the cartels chased somebody onto the beach with machine guns onto the resort property.
Wow.
And I just said, oh, okay, we'll go back to the Bahamas, okay? Because it's once I want to relax. I don't want to, look over my shoulder. I mean, Dominican Republic was bad enough for that, where there was a casino that was like 1 block away from the resort. But, Steve, who's very astute and noticing things, that was the auditor in me, was like, well, wait a minute, the resort has like these big walls surrounding the resort and gates. I mean, these little big gates, and they have armed guards that open and close these gates. Okay, why?
Yeah.
And do I really want to walk 1 block, by myself or with her, to that? No, and people there were telling me, don't do it. And I think that has a lot to do with why people now, if they're going on vacation, the sightseeing portion of it is sort of going away. And it's a little more, okay, how can a vacation help me? And I mean, there's plenty of relaxation resorts, okay, that focus on reducing stress and tension. They have spa treatments, massage, yoga. They can be helpful for individuals experiencing burnout, seeking break from their daily routines. Heck, there are cruises that do that. With just a relaxation cruise, or even just regular cruises. I know we traveled on Carnival a few times, and there was always yoga classes. There was a spa there. We get a massage. I'm a big massage fan.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was, and spa treatments. The facials and stuff. I mean, those, even in the Bahamas, we had that at the resort and then used that all the time. It was something that was really good. And of course, nature retreats, they help you reconnect with the outdoors. Think about it. I mean, you live closer more to a city than I did when I lived in Indiana. I was a little more rural and stuff. But, I grew up in New York City, the concrete jungle.
Yeah.
I mean, you came out the door and there's skyscrapers all around you. and stuff. And I know myself when I got to a place where there was nature all around me, even if we went to like Central Park or something like that, in New York, you had all the grass and not kind that they had in the other parks, but, all nature and trees and everything else. And that helped just in itself relax, hiking, camping, camping is a big thing. I know even my wife will tell you when she was growing up, her parents took her camping all the time. And right there in the state parks, down in Sales and stuff, they would go and do that. Um, it seems to have, I know even for me, a calming effect on our nervous system. And it aids in that meditation, and mindfulness and stuff. And then, of course, as I started talking about spiritual retreats, we still thinking of going back to Sedona, Arizona, where you can go up in the mountains, Red Rocks, and you have those great, meditation experiences and stuff up there. I think those things are all great in themselves. And remember, no matter what type of those vacations you take, the benefits are fantastic for you. And, you really, if you're lost, well, where do I really want to go? Just pick one of those type of things. Say, what do I really want? Do I want to sit, in the great outdoors? Do I want to do something for my mind, or do I want to do something for my body? Activity and stuff, and just go with it.
Yeah. I mean, another thing too is something that I've done in the past is just like a staycation. But it was, if I was just tired of being cooped up, I would just get a hotel downtown and just, watch TV or swim in the pool or whatever, like sometimes just simply, you don't have to travel far, but just changing your environment can work wonders.
You don't even have to, like you said, go away. You can, I remember when we lived in Westport, Indiana, there was once or twice we actually took a hotel room in Columbus, which was like 15 minutes away. Okay, but it was just being somewhere different. You weren't waking up in your bedroom again, in your house. It was something away for a while. And the staycations, as I said, take a daily trip. Just take a trip. We talk about that now because with her in school, but even when she graduates, she'll probably be working 5-6 days a week.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with, like even last night, I was watching a video on YouTube about caves that are up here by Tallahassee. And in fact, you're down in Indiana. What's the one in Kentucky? The Mammoth Cave, I think.
Cave?
Yeah. Well, there's one up here down here in Florida, up by Tallahassee, that is supposed to be even bigger than that one. The person who filmed the video said they'd been to that one and they were floored by this one.
Really?
And I just read something too. They found even another cave system in that same park that was just like a little hole in the ground. And the guy noticed there was air coming out of the hole. And they broke open, the people that worked there broke open the hole, and now they're exploring it. And they said they've gone almost an hour and a half and still haven't found the end of the cave yet.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, just spend the day. We did it, with friends and stuff. My friend Elvin and Shauna, we went out to Kentucky. We went to a couple of caves. There was a little farm, with farm animals and stuff that you can mingle amongst and stuff. And you can have a really good time close to home. I will talk about that a little bit here too, about the finances of it, because a lot of people are saying right now I can't afford that, and I get it. Especially now. I don't want to go into politics, but we're hopefully going to be in a better time soon. But right now, the dollar's tight. And the dollar's tight for a lot of people, especially around here where I live. We got elder people. You live off of either your pension and Social Security, and that's really all you got. I'm actually surprised at how many people work here that are in like their 70s that I still see coming back from work at like 3:00. Whether they be in the Publix outfit or the Walmart thing. They've gone to work. Um, one of the things.
Or go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, any kind of vacation that you can do that will help you mentally reset your brain, is going to help to alleviate that stress. It's going to alleviate that anxiety that you're feeling. Um, you know, I actually found this interesting. It said, and I'm going to read what it says here: the anticipation of travel can create a feeling of excitement and anticipation, which can help reduce stress and anxiety levels. Now, they're not talking about going on the vacation there. They're talking about the anticipation of traveling, planning that trip, looking forward to that change of scenery, that mental escape. I know for myself, and it says here, it leads to increased levels of positive emotions and stuff. I know myself, I couldn't think of anything else.
Yeah.
Especially when we went to Scotland and Ireland. I couldn't imagine, what that was going to be like, going there and going really to another country, something we really hadn't gone to for like 2 weeks, and just experiencing it was fantastic. I was so relaxed before we left that, yeah, it was a 17-hour flight or something like that, but I didn't even think about the flight. I just was looking so forward to getting off that plane, getting to our hotel and just having a really, really good time. And, I think people can realize that, if you plan a trip with a sense of purpose, sense of direction, learning, one of the things we didn't get to do, we had to cancel it because of COVID, but we were going to go to Italy and to England. And in Italy, one of the things Jen and I had planned was a cooking class. Okay, where they were going to teach you how to make pasta, how you were going to make pizza, the real Italian style of making all that stuff. And we had booked all these classes, to do all this stuff. And unfortunately, when COVID hit, no one got to travel. But one other thing, and you even talked about it at the very beginning of the show, is when I talked about the Juro way, and you said you went to travel to be with some friends. Just traveling to be with friends or family, okay, can enhance your whole body and your well-being. Just being able to hang out with friends, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's so. Honestly, they always say laughter's the best medicine, but sometimes I think, man, friendship's the best medicine. Relationships are the best medicine.
A few weeks ago, we had my friend Elvin and Shauna come up, and these are people we traveled the country with. We've gone many places, and they needed a break. Well, he needed a break. He works like almost sometimes 7 days a week for Wendy's Corporation, and they came down and stayed with us here for like 3 or 4 days. And I got to tell you, between laughing, going out, eating, I've lived in my house 2.5 years. I love my lanai. I don't think I used it as much as I did when they were here. It was fantastic. We just sat around, laughed, had such a good time and stuff. And, even though we didn't go anywhere, Jen and I felt like I had a vacation.
Yeah.
By the time they left, it was fantastic.
Definitely. Are there any overlooked destinations that offer, great travel experiences for less money?
Well, there is. There are a lot of countries that you can go to. I know myself, like we talked about the Bahamas. Okay, it's a great place to go. There are a couple of good places just here in the U.S. that you can go to. But like you said, you went to Thailand and stuff. There's a lot of foreign countries that you can go to that really aren't very expensive. Okay, to go away with. People really, some people find it hard to be able to save to go on vacation. Okay, and there's some things that you really need to know. You need to set clear goals. Okay, before you go. You need to be flexible, because with budgets and stuff, if you're flexible and open the different destinations, travel dates, and accommodations. I'm going to give you an example. You may want the flight to leave at 10 o'clock, so you get down to, let's say, the Bahamas at like 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But that flight is almost like prime time flight. Okay, if you took the flight that's earlier in the day, okay, maybe it leaves at 6 a.m. in the morning. And trust me, I was at Indianapolis Airport many times at like 4:30 in the morning, sitting there waiting for someplace to open so I could have breakfast at least while I was sitting in there. You save $200-300 by flying during off-peak hours, or maybe instead of planning your vacation going on Monday through Friday, maybe instead of going Wednesday through Sunday, and you're going to save money. And even flying back, we used to fly back sometimes 7-8 o'clock at night, just so that we didn't, save some money coming back and forth. Now, a question I was asked a lot on this was, use a travel agent or online? I have to be honest, I didn't realize there was that many travel agents still out there until I went looking, trying to find one. Back in the old days, that's all we did was use a travel agent to travel. Nowadays, I mean, I use things like TripAdvisor or, Expedia.com, hotels.com. If you're careful and you do your research on the places that you're going to go, I mean, read the reviews. Don't read one or two of them. Read 15, 20 reviews of a hotel, and you're going to know from reading the reviews if the place is actually worth going to or not. And a lot of times, too, you're going to read a bad review, but especially if you're going out of the country, what we think is like a 4 or 5 star hotel is like a 3-star for us over there. But over there, that's almost like a 4 or 5 star hotel. So you need to read, people may not get their, sheets, turned back or something like that. Do you really care? That there's not a chocolate on your pillow every morning? Are you going to pay thousands of extra dollars? Save some money. Look for those booking platforms. They're going to save you money too when you even rent a car, because all of them have a package, that airfare, hotel, and rent a car, and you'll save a good amount of money and stuff on that. I'm going to give you a couple of quick tips on that too. Have a strict budget. Okay, you maybe want to think about not traveling during peak seasons. Like people want to come down here to Florida, June, July, and August. Okay, maybe you want to think about coming, March or April, or maybe in September or October. It's still warm down here. We really don't deal with winter in a lot of parts of Florida. So, try to go off season a little bit. I know we went off season to Bahamas once around Thanksgiving, and when I first got there, I saw 2 of the workers there walking around with jackets on. I was like, oh crap. I was like, what did we come to? We didn't think this one out, but it was still 90 degrees every day. It's just that they're used to 105. So 90 degrees is cool for them. So they were all wearing a light jacket and long pants. When you're sitting there standing in your bathing suit saying, dude, you want to go back to Indiana? It's like 22 degrees and like 2 feet of snow right now. Okay. And you're sitting here. Also, you want to find, and that even for me too, travelers with any kind of specific requirements, maybe mobility issues, allergies. You want to look around and find something that's really good for that. And here's the thing, book flights in advance, because that can save you money. Use online travel platforms, okay, because that can save you a lot of money too. Consider traveling during off-peak season, as I said, and learn about the culture, attractions, potential challenges to your destinations and stuff, because that's really, really important. And I just want to touch on one other thing before we go, because I noticed that we're getting on there. And again, it's the finances of a vacation, because you should really, this is from U.S. News and World Report. Okay, this is what they recommend. And obviously they've spoken to people that are experts in this field. If you're planning a trip that's more than a year or two out, so let's say you say, you know what, not this year, but maybe towards the end of next year, we're going to go back. We're going to take that trip again to England and to Italy, and going to have a good time. Start saving now. Okay, they call it a sinking fund. Okay, so if you think your vacation is going to cost $5,000, let's say for instance, they say you can put away $416 every month into an account. Okay, and after a year, you're going to be pretty darn close to your target of the money, so that you have your money. Okay, remember that credit card companies offer sign-up bonuses, and you'll be able to earn free cash back, extra airline miles, and travel points. Heck, even with the airlines themselves. I mean, I used to travel a lot with American and Delta, and so, and I still have frequent flyer miles. That I'll give you a quick example. When my aunt had her 80th birthday party, we were still living in Indiana, and we wanted to go. It was a surprise party for her, and we thought, it would really be a surprise if Jen and I showed up. I mean, even half the family that was there. We were able to fly in and fly back the same day, and would have rent a car based on my mileage points. So it didn't cost me anything to go, and we flew in that morning, got to rent a car, drove to New Jersey to where the place was, and then drove back to the airport, later that afternoon, got back into a plane, flew back to Indy, and drove home from there. I mean, check and watch for that stuff, There's so many things. An example they say here, the Disney Premier Visa card from Chase. It offers a $400 statement credit when you spend $1,000 within the first 3 months of opening the account. So if you think about that, if your vacation was going to cost $5,000, and you put a lot of the costs on that, they're going to give you back $400. I mean, you want to talk about, you want to talk about getting back, your money or having extra spending money. They say look for something you could have forgotten for cash. It's not likely, but every penny counts. How many people in PayPal have money, just piled up in PayPal money that's there? Cash that money in. You may have money sitting in Venmo. Cash that money in. Use that for the vacation. Return items you've been meaning to take back. $30 here, $50 here. All that stuff starts to add up. You return that shirt that's too small, as they say here. Remember to convert your credit card points. Many times you convert those into cash. You probably have gift cards from stores, or store cards at the bottom of your drawer. You can sell them and use them towards your vacation fund. Now, this is really far-fetched, but I know some people who did this. Go to unclaimed.org, okay, and find your state's website, because all the links are there for all the states. And you may uncover you have unclaimed insurance money, funds from abandoned bank accounts, and other things. Even people don't even think about, we had a life insurance policy that we really didn't want to use anymore. But I had been paying it for like 6 years. And I was able to cash that policy in for money. Most people just say, I'll just drop it. I'm not going to pay for this anymore. No, there's money that's still left in that. Remember, anytime you book a flight, anything that you do, there's a website called couponcabin.com. Now, I've never heard of that, but it says you can get cash back from using that website. You can cut plenty of travel expenses. Even if you belong to Costco or Sam's Club, they usually have a travel club that you can use. Nothing says that you can't call a hotel and get money off the room or the resort fee. Because remember, look them up. We talked about this a few weeks ago about Vegas, where they have the casino fee and the internet fee and stuff that they start to add on top of that. If you deal with this stuff in advance, you might be able to save money. But the main thing is to plan early. Okay, it gives you more time to hunt for the best prices, airlines, your rentals, and everything else. So no matter where you're going to spend your money, think about where the best use of that money is. Okay, a lot of people say, oh, I want to stay in this good hotel. But really, if you go, let's say, to France or to Ireland or something like that, how much are you actually going to stay in your hotel room?
Yeah.
You're going to sleep in there. That's
Yep.
basically about it. Take that money, save some money on, get a decent hotel, but you don't have to be in a 5-star hotel, and use that money towards more accommodations. I mean, expenses that you're going to do. I used Booking.com, Expedia, hotels, and booked those excursions through there. I mean, even when I was on the cruise, I used Expedia and all those instead of the cruise one, because the cruise one's going to charge you through the nose for some of those excursions. And you can come right outside the boat, and all those other excursions will pick you up right on the pier, right there, and drop you back down at the pier as well. So remember, and if you can swing a vacation in the off season, you're going to save a lot of money. You really are going to save a lot of money. Go someplace where you're going to enjoy, Indonesia, Arizona, Costa Rica. You can go to India. All that, you could save a ton of money. So now I just want to go back and ask you, what should we consider if we want to travel, but are dealing with anxiety or fear of flying, fear of crowds, or maybe being far away from home?
There are still, like we were talking about earlier, it's really about changing your environment. You can change your environment by traveling 100 feet, 100 miles, really it's just, if you look, you'll find something that's going to work, that's going to be fun, and is going to do a lot of good. Even if it's close, even if it's just in the same town or a friend's house. But that'd be my advice. Is there's lots of fun things you can do that don't cost a lot.
Right. And if you're afraid of flying, drive.
Yeah.
If you're doing something here in the US, set up a trip. If you don't think your car can make it, rent the car.
Yeah.
And run the mileage on their vehicle instead of yours. So any last words or insights you'd like to share on this subject?
No, other than, we're worth it. So if you need a break, if you need to recharge, unplug from your devices, take some time for you. It's imperative. It's crucial. It's so important.
Well, the Your Life Matters podcast is making such an important impact on people's lives, helping others heal, gain perspective, and prioritizing their well-being, which is incredibly valuable. Each week we do this podcast hoping that it will help just one person. Now, we know we're not going to change the world with the show. Okay, we're very realist. But if we can just help that one person, someone who needs to hear the message that we're presenting, just gets it and follows through for their mental health and the mental health of their loved ones, then I know Dr. Davis and I will feel like we've accomplished something other than just talking to each other about topics. Remember, as we said, it can be local one-day trip or even just a nature walk, a detox from all things digital, a trip to a new restaurant, a new town, or just visit with friends and family. Give your brain that reset, because you deserve that joy and you deserve that peace. And once again, we want to thank all of you for tuning in. I doubt people are watching live because YouTube sort of blew us to a different channel, a different thing than this. So I'm sure most of the people are going to be watching the replay of this. But we thank you for joining us on our show. Remember to hit the like and subscribe button, because that helps. And you can also comment on it when you're watching the show back, and we go back and we see that. All of this helps the channel. And, the channel's growing. Our listenership is expanding. Okay? Remember, you can visit our website at yourlifematterspodcast.com, and you can sign up for our weekly newsletter there so you know what's coming next week. We have some good shows that are being planned right now. We're just trying to zero in, get firm commitments from some of our guests, because that's really important for us. So until then, remember, this is a place where every episode is a journey into the heart of what truly matters: your health, your adventures, the issues shaping our world, and especially your life today. Whether or not you're seeking inspiration, practical tips, or simply a moment of reflection, we truly hope this podcast will be your compass for navigating life's diverse landscape. Just remember, your story matters, your journey matters, and above all, your life matters. God bless you all, and we hope to see you again next week.